Crowdfunding for games has given a shot in the arm to an awful lot of companies, and it is safe to say that it's here to stay. This is why we organize this next panel, in which a group of people who have experienced what having a successful Kickstarter or some other crowdfunding website campaigns is all about. They should be providing quite a lot of very, very good insight as to what it is like to be there inside doing the campaign. So I'm looking forward to hearing what advice we can get out of this panel.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Kickstart Your Game panel here at the UK Games Expo 2013. I am Michael Fox, your esteemed host. For those of you who don't know me, which is probably everybody apart from my wife and Martin here, I am the presenter of the Little Metal Dog Show, a podcast which can be found at littlemetaldog.com, part of the Dice Tower Network, and that's about it. However, I also, idiotically, last year, decided that it'd be a wonderful idea to try and publish games. That was fun. Of course, being a poor podcaster, because we don't make much money, we decided to go down the Kickstarter route. And inexplicably, Paco, who you just saw run out there, said that's plenty of reason for me to actually come here and present the panel. So, with no further ado, let us present our other panellists. And we'll start from the left and work our way down.
Hi, I'm Andrei Novak. I'm part of NSKN Legendary Games. We're here exhibiting in the King's Pavilion. I've also had one game going on Indiegogo, which is a competitor for Kickstarter, so I'm guessing I'm going to talk about that today.
Sounds cool. Next up.
I'm Chris Birch, the founder of Modiphius, and we launched the Acton Cthulhu Kickstarter a few months back, and which finished successfully.
Rapturously successfully.
Yeah, quite well. Very good.
Did quite well. Next up.
I'm Robin Elliott. I'm director for Triple Ace Games. We just, we had a very successful Kickstarter for Land of Fire, which is being released this weekend. So, we had a really good first Kickstarter.
And last but not least, the most metal man in RPG world.
I'm Angus Abransom from Chronicle City. I've helped advise on a number of different Kickstarters from launch and through duration. We're also about to launch our first actual Chronicle City Kickstarter in a couple of weeks' time for Space 1889 RPG.
That sounds quite sweet, actually. I'll be speaking to you about that later. Cool, so obviously everybody here is aware what Kickstarter is. It's a crowdsourcing platform where if you have an idea, you can put it up there, and with luck and hell of a lot of hard work, you may well be able to get your ideas funded. Of course, the whole thing doesn't stop there. When you've got the money in your pocket, you then have to go through the whole productions process. You then have to get the product out to people, and it's not that easy, as a lot of us here will tell you. But we'll kick off with our experiences. So, Angus, we don't mind starting with you first. What sort of stuff have you had to do to get your project up and running?
Well, because obviously I've helped on a number of projects over the last year or so as well, and one of the most important things before you actually kick the starter is to realise how much money you actually need and break down the components of how much everything's going to cost. Because what I saw certainly in the earlier days was a lot of people might say, right, I've got this book I want to publish, and not really take into account that if they've run a successful Kickstarter, they might be expanding that book well beyond the original 128 pages black and white soft cover that they might be aiming for. They might be wanting to move to full colour, hardcover, expanding the page count, in some cases doubling the page count. And then that obviously has knock-on effect with kind of like not only printing, but the extra artwork they need and everything else. And suddenly, the amount of money that they budgeted goes up and up and up. Through stretch goals, obviously you're earning extra money that you can you're being able to get extra money that you can put into production. But if you're having to make those last-minute decisions during the actual course of a Kickstarter, without having spec'd out where each individual goal, how much it's going to cost. I've certainly seen a few Kickstarters in the past, whilst they've been very, very successful, actually end up losing money at the end of the day to the people involved because they've basically they've promised you more than the money that they've received can actually deliver. And that can either have an effect on seeing projects delayed for ages, or certainly there's a few projects out there that have been 18 months to 2 years that still haven't actually been published, and actually one or two of the people that have produced projects have pretty much almost gone bankrupt in a couple of cases because they've just run out of the cash that they had received. So one of the things when you're running a project is definitely what I tell people is aim high. Kind of like look at what you need, work out all your stretch goals, and work out your stretch goals to your wildest dreams. Kind of like if your project you think, well, I'm after $10,000, work your stretch goals up to 100,000, 150,000, just in case, because if you do take off, then at least you've got those sums there, so you're not having to make quick fire decisions. And that's certainly something with Acton Cthulhu that Chris originally made his stretch goals to the wildest dreams that we thought, we'd possibly get. And, so Chris, and as Chris I'm sure will tell you, the Kickstarter did, go to some of those wildest dreams, which was fantastic. But certainly getting all your monetary sums worked out before you launch the Kickstarter is essential to make sure that you can actually fulfill what you're promising people as you go through. Also, to be honest, the other things that you really need to look at is make sure that when you have the tier goals, which are the pledges that people can place, there's always going to be one which is the sweet spot, the one where the majority of people are going to go, that's the one that I'm going to pledge to. And if you're asking for $10,000, make sure you can work out how many people you need at that level that would actually hit your target. Because most Kickstarters will generally get, on average, between about 200 to 450 backers, on average, it seems, for the majority of them. Obviously, the really successful ones can have thousands. Others can still work with 80, 70 people, depending on how much money they're after to start with. But work out, if you suddenly realise that actually we need 600 people to back at the level we think the majority of people will, then it's probably worth going back and revising your plans and trying to work out how to either be able to get your project to people cheaper, or how to encourage, make other pledge levels more encouraged to try and boost the average spend that people will give you. There's a lot of mathematics and work that goes behind it.
Preparation.
And that's even before you get into looking at all the, making sure you've got a good video presentation. Because one of the things, when I first started using Kickstarter a few years ago, I rarely actually looked at the videos that went along them. If a project was there that I liked, I'd back it without even really looking at the videos. It was only once we started looking at running Kickstarters ourselves or helping other people that we started taking more attention on the videos, because the feedback we were getting, because we realised that, not everyone watches the Kickstarter videos. Out of everyone here who's used Kickstarter, how many of you actually watch the videos all the way through? If I can have a raise of hands. So
not many.
So there's not all that many who do watch the videos. But the videos, to some, are very, very important. So that's, and we also found that if you did a really nice looking video, it could tip the balance for people, who were unsure about the project in the first place.
So let's talk about what it's like to have a successful, almost beyond what you were planning for Kickstarter. So Chris, you've got your Acton Cthulhu there.
Yeah.
Your original target was
£8,000.
Pounds or dollars?
Pounds.
Okay, and you ended up with
177,500.
So he did all right.
Yeah.
Now that's fantastic, because of course you've made ridiculously over your target that you wanted.
Yeah.
But with great power comes great responsibility, of course.
Yes, a lot of work to do.
So when you actually realised that you were now going to be putting a project out that so spectacularly overfunded, how did you actually cope with it? Because I imagine that would be really quite a tricky thing to do.
Well, you're in the middle of it, and you're working till 4 a.m. every single day, and I had a big board at home with this is what I do every day, and it's press releases, it's visiting a string of forums to post the pictures of the new mock-ups of the new product shots and links back to the Kickstarter. So I had about 20 different forums that we would visit every day to just put a comment, hey guys, you know, we just hit this goal, or look at the picture of the new miniatures, here's the new cover or a new piece of artwork. So you're so busy all day long that you'd wake up in the morning and go, oh my God, this is ridiculous. And then you just get on with the day's work because there was so much. And I'd strip back my full-time job, which I've now gone full-time on this. So I was just steaming away on this sort of non-stop every day. And so you get very much wrapped up in the day-to-day running of it, because it's not just, you're not just sitting there seeing the money tick up. To get it to that level, you're constantly doing stuff.
It does become a full-time job, doesn't it?
Oh, it does, absolutely. Yeah, and it's more
you have to devote time.
Yeah, I mean, literally, it was 4 a.m. every single day. Maybe a few days it wasn't, but my wife's going to bed, going, when are you coming? And she's being very patient, and we had to delay our honeymoon until after the Kickstarter finished because she's that patient. So, yeah. It's you've just got to be very, very focused, and when that success is happening, you've just got to be. What we did is do a lot of research with the fans beforehand. So we asked them, these are all our ideas for stretch goals. Which do you like? So we found out that things like dice and T-shirts and fluffy things weren't really that popular, but anything that added to your world, like the extra content, the extra artwork, the extra books, the miniatures were very exciting. But we also found out the miniatures weren't as exciting as extra books, so we did the miniatures at the end. But it was the miniatures that access to a whole new audience. So we had people just coming and buying 3 of every set of miniatures.
God, miniatures do seem to be this sort of golden thing on Kickstarter. If you put any game you have, put miniatures in it, and you get £3.5 million easy. Yeah. If you walk away with anything, remember that. Now, of course, Hellfrost has just been delivered. You literally received this week.
I literally was sitting in the van, about to leave from Wiltshire, where I live, to come up to the show, waiting for the books to be delivered from China, and luckily they arrived.
What's it feel like to have your first project in your hands?
I'm incredibly excited about it. I mean, I can only sort of back up what Angus is saying. It's a huge amount of work. It's even more work than just normally producing a role-playing game. You have so much expectation from the backers. They obviously have trusted you to come up with the goods. We're talking to people that are our fans, so we don't want to let them down. It's quite stressful. I remember talking to Wiggy, who's our main author, and he couldn't go to bed. He was sitting there refreshing Kickstarter to watch the pledges come in. This is when we were trying to get to our target, which was £9,000. We actually ended up not quite as impressive as Chris, but we got to just under £12,000, which was more than enough for what we needed to make our book. And we were just so pleased to hit the £9,000 target. But it was stressful, just trying to can we get there? Can we get there? Because of course, if you don't hit your target, any pledges that have been made, you don't get that money. You have to hit your target. So it's watching it tick up. So to get the actual book delivered this weekend, it's been quite a long road, but we're extremely happy and pleased. The other experience that I found is don't make it too complicated. We probably made it overcomplicated, our Kickstarter, with the different pledge levels, and it confused a hell of a lot of people. So don't make it too complicated is another thing to do.
Keep it simple.
Keep it simple. Because I spent a lot of time just having to explain it. So for the next one we do, we're going to make it so much simpler, and we're going to do another one. I'm not quite sure what the next product will be, but we plan to do one sometime this year. It's a great thing, Kickstarter, for companies, because it's very difficult to get capital to make games. As probably everybody knows, it really is an amazing thing. the only other thing that we found is that we waited until Kickstarter UK opened up. I think Angus has probably worked with the Kickstarter US side of things.
Yeah, I've worked with both.
Yeah. We obviously have a lot of US fans, and they were slightly put off because it was in pounds.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something to consider as well. If your target audience is in the UK, that's fine. If it is actually you're selling to the States, then you've got to try and persuade those fans to understand the pounds. And you know, it's a simple thing, but actually it's amazing how much is that worth and things like that.
Yeah, one thing that's add on to that is because generally speaking, you see US dollars on, you know, being British or European, you will see US dollars on a lot of products and be able to relate, right, that's the US dollar, this was going to be the euro or the UK price. In the US, of course, they will only ever see the dollar amount on it. So then being able to have that, trying to convert it within themselves, they just don't know how much it will convert. The other thing, of course, is $1 is going to be worth something like 70 pence to us. So if a book's on there for, say, $15, it means that we're probably going to be paying maybe about £10 or so. Whereas if we've got a book on there for £15, it might end up being about $20 to them. So it's a higher number. So psychologically, there's also that effect of going, oh, it's more, as opposed to for us where we go, actually, 15 looks like 10, that sounds good.
Yeah.
So there's a psychological effect on UK and US Kickstarters as well. One thing I will say is, I think it's beginning, the US-UK difference on Kickstarter is beginning to change. And again, certainly I think we found that with Chris's, because one of the reasons we were uncertain before we launched, before Chris launched his Act on Cthulhu Kickstarter, about the same thing, worrying that it would put off US purchases because it's a UK Kickstarter.
Yeah, we asked everyone whether in the survey whether dollars would be an issue, and a few people said it was, but in the end we had about 800 US backers, and only in the UK only about 400. The rest are around the rest of the world, and it just seems that they dealt with it because we pushed it down their throats so much.
But of course, the US market is massive, so
You can't ignore it.
You can't ignore it, no.
Yeah.
But in the end, because it's not very easy to kind of manipulate pricing in Kickstarter, you've got certain rules to follow. I had to create graphics which would show the pound value and the roughly equivalent dollar value, so that everybody would understand.
That's it. Even on your tiers, your pledge levels, we did a small. Our first one was Fox and Chicken. Well, our first successful one was Fox and Chicken, a simple, stripped down version of Werewolf that was sort of like more family friendly. And even on there we said, okay, so £9 will get you a copy of the game, and then it said underneath it, US backers, this works out to roughly $15. It's just like, it's a little thing that helps, and anything you can do to help to get your project up and running is very useful indeed. Now, Kickstarter, we keep on saying Kickstarter. There are other crowdfunding platforms out there, of course. There's Spiel Offensive, which is very much a German board game focused sort of thing, but the sort of second in the market, as it were, is Indiegogo, which is a European-based crowdfunding site that Andrei from NSKN Legendary has used to great success, which is pretty cool.
I guess that's why I'm here now. We managed to get a board game successfully through Indiegogo. The reason is Kickstarter is still not open to, well, the rest of the Europe. I mean, it's open now to UK. It used to be open. I mean, it's still open to US, but it's not open to the rest of the world. Indiegogo is open to everyone. The difference is the size and the number of backers you can get. So we used Indiegogo not only as a crowdfunding tool, but also as a marketing tool. And I think this also applies to Kickstarter. I mean, even if you have a product which you need to fund, think about how much more attention you can get for that product just by putting it there. So we used it as a marketing tool. We were supposed to make the game anyway. We just used it to see how people would react. And even though we did not get so much money, we exceeded our goal with about 15%, which is still a success. We managed to get the attention of all the important people in the board game industry, and basically this put us a little bit on the map of the board games. just because we were there and we were one of the very few companies who managed to push board game through a different crowdfunding platform. As advice, I mean, the other guy said pretty much what there is to say. I would say that it's very important to have structure. I mean, people spend, we had some short survey, people spend in average about 20 seconds before deciding to leave or not to leave the Kickstarter page. So if you get them past those 20 seconds, there is a chance that they will read everything and back it. So it's important to have a structure. You said most of the people here don't even look through the whole video. So it's important to have a short video and a relevant one, but also the first few lines of the project when you explain people why they should give you money. It's really important to explain it very well and for people to have an idea what they're backing. There are so many projects out there nowadays that it's very difficult. I mean, I have a budget to back stuff on Kickstarter. I'm backing it probably one per month, but that's what I can afford. So I'm gonna choose my project wisely because 2 years ago there were, like, board game wise, maybe 20, 30, 50 per year. Now there are hundreds of maybe thousands. I lost track. So it's important to do it well. Well, in UK have the luck to have access to Kickstarter, but there are other crowdfunding websites. Indiegogo is probably the second biggest, and it comes with an advantage. If you have a board game on Indiegogo, you will be one of the very few people who have a board game on Indiegogo. So it's not like people have to choose from a million. It's just you and a few others. The quality of the project is also lower on Indiegogo, so if you have a good project, you are most likely to be seen. The guys from Indiegogo, they're also putting their choices on the first page every day. If you have a good project, again, you have a much better chance of being there and being seen.
I think the only issue is the level of traffic that hits Indiegogo in comparison to Kickstarter it's a very, very large difference. So
it is.
Going down the Indiegogo route it's certainly viable, but you must be aware that there will be a lot less people who will actually go and just stumble across your site, across your page.
But you also get any of the money that's raised. You don't have to succeed. Do you?
Yeah, there are two options.
You have the option of doing well. You can have a goal, and if you don't get funded, you don't get the money. Same, I guess, Kickstarter, or you can have like flexible funding. You get whatever you raise there. But if you promise something and you raise £50, you still have to deliver the product to those 1 or 2 people. And, well, people tend to be afraid of flexible funding. We used it because of technical reasons. So Kickstarter works with Amazon payments. Indiegogo works with PayPal. Well, we needed money in a bank account, so we had to use flexible funding where you can choose how you get the money. There are some technical issues that you need to go through, but it is possible to find stuff through Indiegogo. But you have to be careful that if you use flexible funding, you really have to deliver. Otherwise, well, people will punish you in the long run.
Very true. So let's throw it open to the floor. If you have questions, we can't purport to be the biggest experts in the world, but hell, we'll give it a shot. Gentleman over there.
Could I ask about the tax ramifications of all that money coming into your bank account? Because all the advice on the internet pertains to America.
I think it's income, so you have to declare it if it's part of your company accounts. So yeah.
It's not. It does. I know Kickstarter says it's not a sale,
Right.
but it is a sale in the UK law. So if you are selling a product which is VATable, you've got to account for VAT. So, like, for example, our miniatures that we sold, we lose 20% of what we've raised on Kickstarter for the miniatures as VAT. Because as much as Kickstarter tells you, it's not, there is no contract. You don't, at the end of the day, there is nothing that says you have to deliver. Of course, there is a responsibility to deliver, and your name will be dog if you don't. But in the UK, there actually is a contract of sale. So
if you're making board games from the UK, you're effectively at least 20%.
I think board games are only VATable.
Right, for those that are sold to a UK, there are little ways around it. For instance, if you're printing your board game abroad and have it distributed from America, obviously you're paying the localized tax of whatever country that's sourced in. So you'd just be paying, and the thing is if I have a board game and I send it to you in the UK from a UK source, I then pay the VAT and tax on that. if it's sent from America to a UK source, then you, when you receive it, will be charged tax by customs, basically, when it comes through.
Yeah,
so that's how the UK basically makes their
It's
money
essentially
one
who
way or
you're
t'other.
selling it to
Yeah.
in the UK, and also if you're only going to get taxed if you've got any money left at the end of the year. So just try and spend
Interestingly,
it all.
books you don't get taxed on.
Yeah, but
So yeah,
books
make
are good.
books.
Yeah.
Gentleman here.
Chris, you said you researched to establish feasible stretch goals. What sort of media did you use to generate?
I just use our website. We use a basic website called Weebly, and it lets you do simple questionnaires. So we sent out to all our database, and we've been selling the Acton Cthulhu books for a year now. We did a free comic that got us about 1,000 email addresses. So we had a big database that we could say, hey, everyone tell us what you think. And then we used that to steer our decisions through the process.
Yeah, having a fan base or a user base to work from is, while it's not vital, by God, it's useful. Definitely.
Well, one of the other things that we did with Acton Cthulhu as well is we had a very large press list of Carbolite sites, journalists, podcasts, loads of people that we could email about. And one of the reasons why Chris was Carbolite going to bed at 4 in the morning, getting up at probably about 7 or 8 a couple hours later, was because of the amount of publicity that Chris was doing.
We did interview on site.
We did, yeah. I mean, there are 900 gaming websites, podcasts, and bloggers. There isn't just RPGNet and Board Game Geek. There are 900, and there are more that we're still researching. If you know anyone, and if you ever exhibit at Gen Con, here's a tip. Gen Con exhibitors get a copy of the press list that Gen Con have. Because everyone who's a press person who goes to Gen Con has to register their details to get a free ticket. So Gen Con gives you that press list, which is fantastic. So if you know anyone who's exhibiting, ask them nicely and maybe they'll give you a copy. But that's only about 400. And my lovely wife spent weeks and weeks and weeks just going through other companies' press releases, Googling that press release, finding out which sites had carried that news, and then going to that website and finding the email address and painstakingly building a press list. So,
Very cool. Gentleman here.
Okay, I'm just in a minute. I'm going to tell you my personal game case. Well, I designed a board game a year ago, and I presented this game at the fair last October. And we played the game with a couple of people, experts, and they gave us a very good feeling back. So we thought we were already pretty mature to do something with the game. And the other comment we got is, why don't you develop a mobile version of some of the questions of the board game? Well, we came back to Madrid and very encouraged. And 2 months later, we saw one of our questions being offered in the Google Store and in the Apple Store. We were thinking of what to do, how do we develop this thing. We were only contacting people, developers, when we saw the first version in December, so 2 months later.
So basically somebody else took your idea and did it themselves?
Did a mobile version of one of the questions of the game.
Yeah, without license with you?
Yeah, sure,
okay.
Sure, without anything.
Well, that's...
Fun.
Have you got... The version you showed at Essen, was that just a play test
Yeah, we actually presented in the game in two settings. One was an author association of Germany, which is called SAF.
Yeah.
Who these guys let us play a couple of games in their stand, in their place.
Yeah.
And then 15 days later we went to Munich, and we actually rented a small place
Yeah.
to show the game. So a lot of people saw the game officially.
Yeah. As it's not directly related to Kickstarter, if you want to grab me after a panel, and I'll talk through a few things and find out a little bit more about the case and see if we can give any advice. But if it was in a Kickstarter context and somebody had done a Kickstarter game, but then somebody else released something very, very similar. One of the big problems with board games is you can't actually copyright the mechanics and the ideas of the game, which is one of the reasons why I don't know how many of you are aware of a game called Apples to Apples, which is a very, very, very popular family game. Probably about a year and a half, 2 years ago, there's a game called Cards Against Humanity, which has done phenomenally well, which has also been on Kickstarter. But it is basically an adult version of Apples to Apples for all effects. But the thing is because you can't actually copyright the mechanics as such, anyone can do a game like that. And actually, since Cards Against Humanity has been really popular, there's been a whole bunch of other games like Politically Incorrect come up, which is again exactly the same game, just with different question cards and various bits and pieces. And again, Monopoly is another one that you see. You've got Monopoly that's been around for decades, and there's been a lot of other Monopoly variants come through. Because you can't, and
You
I
can't
think
copyright roll and move.
Yeah, and they tried to actually defend Monopoly in court and lost the case because you can't do, you can't do the mechanics.
You trademark the name, can't
You can trademark the name and you can do the imagery,
Yeah.
but you can't actually do the mechanics. So, and it's as simple as just rewording the rules. It's why, for instance, Dungeons and Dragons. The reason why there's a number of variants outside of the OG, because there's something called OSRIC, which is basically the old school mechanics which use the original rules, and that's perfectly valid because you just rewrite them using slightly different words, and that's absolutely valid, even though all the sums and mechanics are essentially the same.
Dune and Rex. What?
Yeah, that's
Basically, it's Dune with just different names in.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
there were reasons behind. And again, it's not a Kickstarter thing, but there were reasons behind that. I interviewed Peter Olocker about it, and it was, the people who owned the Dune licenses wouldn't give them the license. So that's pretty simple.
Yeah.
Questions, gentlemen here, please.
We've obviously been hearing about your experiences putting people putting stuff onto Kickstarter. I'm quite interested, before that, your experiences of buying things, backing things.
Oh yeah, actually that's really important.
And particularly since it was until now a US Kickstarter, the only one experience that I've had was that I paid twice as much for my game and got it a week after it was in my local.
Which one was it, dare I ask?
Miskatonic
School for Girls.
Yeah.
Yeah, that wasn't that good either, was it? In the end?
But ever since then, I'm interested to see how the UK version goes. Obviously, I just cannot justify the customs.
That is the horrible thing about getting stuff from the States. You will often get caught with the customs, and it's so horrible when you get that little letter. You're excited, and everybody else has got their copies of their games, and then you get the little letter that comes through, and you put it off. It's just like, you have a £45 customs charge. It's just like bollocks. Sometimes you're lucky. Sometimes the companies will say, well, we can mark this down as a game worth X amount of money, but again, they're kind of legally obliged over in the States to put down the true value, and then if it does go missing, they will only be able to pay that amount of money that they put down on the actual thing. So unfortunately, it's kind of swings and roundabouts. You run the risk, whatever you buy in the States. It doesn't matter if you buy it on Kickstarter, pledge for it on Kickstarter and get it afterwards, or if you just go to a US store and have something sent over to you.
It's the fact that more and more, even the biggest companies are starting to do things on US Kickstarter.
Oh yeah, certainly. I mean, look at Queen Games, for example.
How many of these are going to come through the general distribution?
One good thing, if I may say, there are a few companies who are now working out ways that they can distribute products that have been done on US Kickstarter. They're going to be distributed through Europe. So Game Salute, for example, who are currently running a whole bunch of campaigns and have done several over the last few months. They are working on having a UK distribution centre, which will then send out stuff all over Europe, which of course will take down on customer charges spectacularly. So it is a risk that you run, but read through. If you find a project that interests you, read through the information, see what they say about if there's anything they can do to mitigate such things, or if there's anything they can do to have things actually distributed from the country where you are at the minute.
I guess the follow-on to that is that for you now on Kickstarter UK, distribution to the US.
Same thing.
One of which I know Robin will all stick up, and Chris. Most of the games that we actually are publishing and printing are actually originate or warehoused in the US to start with anyway, and then we basically freight X number of copies over to a UK source that then distributes them out from the UK.
Does that mean the UK pay more then?
No, it does, because when you think about it, if taking Robin's book for example, when it comes out through the stores, obviously it's printed in China, shipped to the US, then as DGM Games being the primary distributor in the UK, it will ship X number out, which will then sell to the stores. At the same time, for stock that arrives in the US for Robin, there'll be a section then freighted over to wherever Robin wants it to be sent, that he can then arrange to have sent out to UK. So it doesn't actually cost any more. And actually what that actually allows us to do, which is an advantage for UK-based Kickstarters in some respects, is a number of Kickstarters use free postage for their country. What this allows potentially is to either allow a reduced or free postage in both the US and the UK, and also a reduced level of postage potentially for European customers, because we're sending it within the European Union as opposed to from North America. What Michael was saying about some of the board games is again true. There's a number of places which are now looking at options where they just freight a shipment over to one central source within the European Union that can then send them out without actually having the customer hit with custom charges, because obviously we pay custom charges on the value of a product, and of course the value of a product when it's shipping to us is the printed value as opposed to you, which is the retail value. So obviously the custom charges are a lot less, and also as a business there's ways that they can be offset.
I actually got this shipped directly from the printer to the UK and US.
You can do split shipping. A lot of companies go that way.
The guys that Kickstart from the UK will be getting stuff from within the UK.
So, sorry.
It's all right. Sorry, go for it.
Fred, on the levels of the game, the Kickstarter, you get the basic version, you might get a promo, you might get an extra bit of artwork, up to all the bells and whistles. How do you determine what levels you put in there, what they're worth to people? How do you make that sort of decision?
Well, it's far from an exact science, I think. But step one.
People who've done that sort of thing, how did they? What did they do?
Can I just add on that? Why do you really need to have so many different? I mean,
you don't.
Is something going to get? If it's really reached its goal,
you don't. It's entirely down to you. Yeah.
Published, I'll put the money in now. Why do they need stretch goals?
Well, if you look at someone like Max Temkin, who was one of the guys responsible for Cards Against Humanity, recently did a game which had one pledge level. That was it, which was great. Get a copy of the game for $10, done, sorted. But I think with stretch goals, people like having something that little bit extra. When you want to entice people into your project, of course, and if you can offer them that little bit more and get them that little bit more stuff, because people like stuff. I mean, everybody here likes lots of bits in their games and lots of extra stuff in their books and things. If you can get that little bit extra, that's not exclusive for people, but it's a little extra add-on. That's a good way for your product to get into more people's faces, and more people will hear about it, and this is going to get here and this is going to get here. People like stretch goals, people like reaching for targets.
And you're also growing your world, because you also got to remember that when you do a Kickstarter, they won't let you do another one really until it's very clear that you're fulfilling the goal of that one. I mean, there are people who do them, but they've often like Cool Minis or not often have several going at the same time, or Game Salute. But once you've funded, like when we funded our core books, we were like, well, people want campaigns next. We knew we had to do a campaign, and if we didn't do it as part of the Kickstarter, we'd have to wait 6 months. and then that's 6 months before you can do the Kickstarter and then get it written. So, and once the core books are out, you've got a real window of opportunity for people to start playing the game, getting into your world. So it made sense to fund those books, because if we didn't, then we didn't know when we'd be able to do it.
But they were going to be available for general distribution afterwards.
Oh, they will.
People that were.
Yes, they're not necessarily
Necessarily
exclusive stuff.
The
Yeah.
exclusives for Kickstarter, particularly when it's a US one, when
Yeah.
you can't justify the customs.
Exclusives
Yes, yeah.
are they're both fantastic and they're horribly evil, I think. People love the fact that check it out, I've got Alien Frontiers, for example, one of the first big games to fund on Kickstarter. Loved, loads of people who got that first edition got it was one card, and the amount of war that came out of that from people on Board Game Geek, because these people had one extra card that was never going to be available afterwards, was it was a horror. Again, going back to Fox and Chicken, in our one we have 5 exclusive cards, and I had people email and go, why are you doing exclusive cards? Why, tough, it's my call. I made it. We designed. We put the game together, and we wanted to sort of say thank you to the people who were helping us get this little product off the ground.
Yeah,
It will stop people buying those.
It will do, but you hope that the people who are really excited about it will outweigh the amount of people who are going to say, well, I'm not getting that because it's exclusive. Well, screw those guys.
I think one of the things with some of the exclusives, exclusive promos and various bits and pieces, is you as a producer want to obviously try and encourage people to back it, because you're after to hit, certainly initially your first target, so you can actually produce a game to start with. So you will have an urge on some projects to offer, promo cards for, for the, if you back us now, you will get this little bit something extra that you can't get at retail. And actually, from myself as somebody who backs Kickstarters, because I'm in a very similar situation to you, I rarely ever back any board game or card game Kickstarters that originate from US unless they have UK internal posted options, because I was getting hit with customs charges that were just kind of like, and it was ending up being more expensive than I could have brought it for at the local shop, and like you said, occasionally a week or two after I could have brought it for the local shop, which really annoyed me. But when I look at the board games, I look at what they will offer that I can't get if I just wait for it to eventually come out. So in some respects, that exclusive promos is the thing that would actually encourage me to back it, as opposed to just wait. For role-playing games, one of the easiest ones that I spot is when you start kind of like getting a lot more PDFs. So you're buying, there's a PDF option, or you're buying the book, and you're just getting extra PDFs thrown on free of charge for that, and you can buy additional add-ons charges to buy print versions of them. But for your £20 or £35, you're actually then getting a whole host of extra material electronically that you wouldn't be able to. So again, there's ways that you can be encouraged to purchase.
Yeah, one thing that I would say is utterly vital when it comes to exclusives as well, is if you are going to offer somebody on a Kickstarter campaign or any crowdfunding campaign something that is going to be exclusive and will never be available afterwards, please, for the love of God, make sure that it doesn't change the game significantly. If it adds something that's nice and fun or nice and silly, or it's exclusive dice that will never be done ever again, awesome. However, if it's going to change a rule, and one person's gaming experience is going to be very different to another person's gaming experience, despite the fact that one person bought it on Kickstarter, one person bought it on retail, you will have a war on your hands, and no one will come out well from this at all. Gentleman here at the back.
Yeah, the gentleman on the right was talking about the official distribution channels. And let's say you're in the lovely situation that your project is funded, and you're going to make your order with so many copies, but then how would you contact the official distribution of like Britain or America?
Call them.
And
it's that simple.
Is it just that easy?
Yeah.
And will they buy your product just because you've got a successful Kickstarter, or do you have to really sell it?
It really does depend.
It really depends. But I mean, for us, we were an established company. We'd already made those links with the distribution company. So they know what standard our products are. Well,
I would say that two successful Kickstarter might get you out of the classical distribution channels. I mean, companies, especially in the US, are starting to feel the pressure of Kickstarter. The best example is Cool Minis or Not. They got like 3-4 million, and big distribution companies become reluctant to carry their games because they don't know how many more they can sell.
Yeah, it's like, is the market full? Is it saturated? Yeah.
And a semi-successful Kickstarter, I mean, a Kickstarter of 10, 15,000 with, let's say, stretch goals up to 30, 35, I'm talking about board games here, would still allow you to go to the classical distribution channels. A lot more, like 200, 300,000, you'd have a bit of a problem, and this is a case-by-case basis.
Yeah.
And you're ahead of the competition because you've got a finished game. So once you've got your prototype that's paid for or finished production, you can. One of the issues of distribution is they are getting people pitching them ideas that aren't ready, and they don't know when they're going to be ready. And distribution wants to know that it's going to be there on the deadline, because once they start backing you and selling you, if you don't have a finished product, that messes up their schedule. So you've got a head start, but you've still got to go out and pitch the distributors with your idea.
As far as locating those distributors, one of the easiest things is just ask, if you know somebody who works in the games industry, just ask where they buy it from or sell to, and they'll be able to give you a number and you'll be able to work your way through. There's a number of groups, because apart from the distributors, there's a number of fulfillment agencies, especially in the US, that operate with a whole bunch of different clients that sell your product into the distributors. Well, GameSalute are starting to do that. I was thinking more of people like PSI, which carries the AAA's games. There's a company called Impressions that I work with. There's also a company called Studio 2 and a number of others that have a group, a whole bunch of different companies that they then sell into a distribution for. So it's like, they're a one-stop shop as such for a whole bunch of other companies.
Because actually, it's a full-time job. If you were trying to sell into distribution, you wouldn't have any time to make games. So as Angus says, we use this third-party company to do that work for us, to push out the marketing for us. But if you're intending to launch a company based on a Kickstarter product, it's not just enough to have the product. You've got to have a solid business plan as well, and you can't just start a company and sell a product. There's a lot more involved. So that's a whole another subject, starting a business.
It's a lot of fun. Now, guys, I'm afraid to say we're going to have to wrap this up, but I think one thing we can all say is that Kickstarter is it's changing the landscape of how board games, role-playing games, the things that we love to play, how they are not only made but also how they get to the tables of people all around the world. But as I said earlier, it's not an exact science. We're all still learning, and we will all be learning every time something new we put up on Kickstarter happens. Not everything is going to be successful. If your project falls on its backside, it happens. The vast majority of projects on Kickstarter actually fail. I think we're looking at something like 70% at the moment. It's just the ones that succeed, and succeed really, really well.
I want one of those.
Yeah, I want one of those. Wow, that's amazing.
One thing I would say is, if you're looking at launching a project on Kickstarter, back a bunch of projects first to see how they handle it, see how their updates come through, what you like about it, what you change about it. Now, with Kickstarter, a lot of projects you can back for $1 or £1, and that gets you all the updates that they're sending out to their backers. And so you can learn through yourself, before you actually launch yours, what you feel works, and then you can take that and add it onto your Kickstarter to try and follow that route.
That's good. Well, thank you very much indeed, guys, for coming on the panel. Thank you very much indeed, everybody, for coming and listening to us jabber away. If you have any questions or anything like that, I'm sure all of us would be happy, as long as we were about and we're free, would be delighted to say hello and talk further with you. But first, I think coffee is in order. So thank you very much indeed, everyone. Cheers.